Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Fro Wrestling Podcast. I'm Mr. Fro, giving you all the latest breakdown of what's been going on in the world of wrestling. I want to apologize right up front for taking a couple days to get to you guys about the Shakeup on Smackdown. We did the one on Raw the other day, but I've been very busy the last couple days. Have not been able to give you guys a reaction to what happened on Smackdown, but that's what we're going to do today. So, I want to kick it off right away talking about the first movement on Smackdown. It was announced prior to the show going live, which was Jinder Mahal moving from Raw to SmackDown. Now, here's the thing. I think that people who listen to this podcast on a fairly regular basis have noticed that I'm actually a very big fan of Jinder Mahal. I was hoping that by making this move to SmackDown that he would be put into a situation where he could actually start to cultivate his character and go someplace really positive. And unfortunately, I'm concerned that after the first week being there, putting him back out there with Mojo Rawley, which I kind of expected coming out of WrestleMania, seeing Gronkowski out there again, I understand the booking of that. My concern is this. WWE has cultivated some of the best talent in the world. They've put together programs, whether you count NXT, SmackDown, Raw, they really do have some of the best talent they've ever had in the history of their company. If you go back even to the earlier days when Vince first took over, he was known for always having like the big monster guys, the muscle heads or the 7-foot tall guys, and he didn't give a lot of credibility or opportunity as much to the smaller guys, and that changed. You know, back in the day, the NWA had the best wrestlers in the world, but now the WWE has really put a full court press on trying to cultivate the best in-ring performers they can, and they've done a good job of that. The problem is you get somebody like Jinder Mahal, who is clearly very talented. He's clearly got so much potential, and he's not being used very much. And the times that he is used, he's almost put into... don't get me wrong, I'm okay with him being in the mid-card, but he's not even really in the mid-card. He's in the low-card. You know, he's above people like Bo Dallas. He's above people like, you know, Breezango, but he's not... he'll never have an opportunity to be a champion. And that was something I didn't like on Raw. Now, he moves to SmackDown, and my concern is I don't want to see the same thing there. I actually would like to see Jinder Mahal have a run with the United States Championship at some point. I'd like to see him get a shot to not win the World Championship, because I don't think he's World Champion. But what I do think is that there's an opportunity there for him to challenge for it and lose gracefully enough that it establishes his character is significantly better than what they've done with him in the past. And that's something that the way they booked him his first night on the card in SmackDown, I'm concerned that may not happen. Going forward after Jinder Mahal, the big announcement was Kevin Owens bringing the United States Championship to SmackDown. Now, I don't know anybody else who was fooled by that. As soon as you see Dean Ambrose show up on Raw with the Intercontinental Championship, you have to expect Kevin Owens to show up with the United States Championship. But my concern with this is very simple. It makes it so Dean Ambrose can't lose at the next pay-per-view. He can't lose the Intercontinental Championship to Baron Corbin, and that's a problem. Baron Corbin deserved the Intercontinental Championship after everything he's done in the last year, establishing himself as a real player in World Wrestling Entertainment. He deserved a chance to run with the title. And now he's in with Dean Ambrose leaving and no established feud going on for the United States Championship until they made the number one contenders match, and AJ Styles was going to be the number one contender. Baron Corbin kind of gets lost in the shuffle again, and it's going to postpone his development into a top-level star, and I have a little bit of a problem with that as well. But I'm thrilled to see Kevin Owens move over to the brand because I think Kevin Owens and Dean Ambrose were in very similar positions. I think that Kevin Owens, I'm not trying to knock Dean Ambrose. I love Dean Ambrose to death. I think he's one of the best characters in all of the business, but I think Kevin Owens has a little more to offer SmackDown than Dean Ambrose did. I feel like Ambrose, I said this on a previous podcast, was kind of toiling a little bit on SmackDown, so I was okay with his move to Raw. Kevin Owens, on the flip side, just was Universal Champion a month ago. He's U.S. Champion now, and he brings something to SmackDown that wasn't there before. Yes, some people were already saying online that he's kind of like The Miz. Well, The Miz, I feel The Miz should have gotten a World Championship run, but he didn't get one, and Kevin Owens did. So The Miz's World Championship is years past now. It's way in the rear view, whereas Kevin Owens is a recent World Champion. So I think his presence on SmackDown brings a little more clout to the top of the card. Bringing Sami Zayn, I think, before Kevin Owens moved over, I thought Sami Zayn would be a fantastic move to SmackDown. Now I'm actually not so sure, and here's why. I love the fact that he'll be working with people who are of similar body size, similar makeup, similar skill set. I think that's going to only prove to give him great matches. However, I don't want to see him and Kevin Owens in the ring anytime in the next 2 years. I would love for those two not to be in the ring for the next 2 years, because we've seen it so much. And that's hard to say because they don't put on a bad match, but I'm just tired of seeing the same match, you know? So I would have loved for Sami Zayn to or Kevin Owens, one or the other, to be on opposite brands. I don't care which one on which brand. You could have made the argument for Zayn to stay on Raw now that they've changed GMs and everything, and instead they moved him to SmackDown. So, you know, it does provide opportunity. I think you could buy Sami Zayn beating someone like AJ Styles or beating someone like Randy Orton for the championship, so I'm okay with him being there. I just wish he and Kevin Owens could get away from each other for a little while and something more substantial than a week or two apart. You know, it seems like only a few weeks ago they were in the ring together again. It's just too much. Moving on, the Shining Stars made their surprise entrance to SmackDown, which was actually one of my favorite parts of the show. Watching them come out and lay out American Alpha, they didn't look like the Shining Stars. They didn't look like two matadors anymore. They look like two guys, and I'm going to, for people who've been watching WWE for a long time, I'm going to throw this back to a different situation from a few years ago, several years ago. Back when Chuck and Billy were the tag team champions. This is going back far. We're talking like 2005-ish. Chuck and Billy were the tag team champions, and they had this flamboyant alternative lifestyle kind of gimmick they were doing. Rico was their manager, and they did this thing where 3-minute warning, which was Rosie and Jamal, was when they debuted with the company, and Eric Bischoff was leading them down the way. When they came out and they attacked these two alternative lifestyle men, it made for an interesting storyline, because when Chuck and Billy came back, they shed the flamboyance, and they showed up on SmackDown and just laid people out, and it was a different feel for Chuck and Billy. This is exactly the same feel I got from the Shining Stars this past Tuesday night. I watched the Shining Stars come out, and instead of coming out with these, you know, extra long, you know, tights and worrying about the silliness and the button-down shirts, they showed up in jeans and looked buff, and they get in the ring and they lay out American Alpha, who has been completely squandered since arriving on SmackDown. So I actually love the Primo Epico, the way they debuted, because it's really hard sometimes to cultivate somebody as a top attraction when they've been buried for so long, and I felt like they did such a good job with the Shining Stars. They instantly took them from being a comedic act to being an attraction, and I like that. Tamina Snuka showing up on the women's roster, long overdue. I don't feel like this was much of a swap. When you've been off TV for the better part of a year, that's not a swap to me. That's like a new signing. She shouldn't even have been counted as part of the swap. But I'm happy to see her on the show. I find it interesting that I was just watching on the WWE Network Table for Three, and it was Tamina Snuka, Charlotte Flair, and Natalya, and now coincidentally, speaking of our next person, Charlotte is also on SmackDown, which we predicted all along. We knew when Alexa Bliss went to Raw that Charlotte would be making a move to SmackDown. But it's interesting to see, if you get a chance, if you have the network, go on and watch that Table for Free. It's an interesting back and forth between these three people, talking about being third generation wrestlers, females, and they seem to have such a great connection with each other. Now the three of them will be on the same brand, and I think that's wonderful. I think Charlotte brings so much credibility to the women's division on SmackDown, because even though Alexa Bliss was a talent and she was an incredible heel, I don't think people looked at her on the same level as they look at Charlotte. I don't like the way Charlotte was being buried on Raw for the last 5 or 6 weeks. I feel like after you have someone dominate the division for so long, now what is she supposed to do? It's like telling SmackDown they've got a lesser women's division. Here's this lady who's been beat up 6 weeks in a row. Now we're going to send her to your show where she's going to be a top draw. I don't like that booking, but to each his own. You know, I'm not in WWE, obviously. I'm not on the creative team. If I was, things would have been booked wholly different. But Sin Cara making a move to SmackDown, that kind of threw me a little bit. There was a article out only earlier the same day saying that they were planning on reuniting Sin Cara and Kalisto to reform the Lucha Dragons on Raw, and then they moved Sin Cara over to SmackDown. Like, I don't understand that. Sin Cara hasn't done anything of substance in months. He had that really goofy outfit at WrestleMania. I don't know if anybody checked that out. It looked like he was the Blue Power Ranger, but he's done nothing. So making a move with him, he's almost the same move as moving Kurt Hawkins, because Kurt Hawkins really does nothing for moving the needle either. Rusev moving to SmackDown is somewhat interesting to me. He's on the shelf. He's not doing much, and I hadn't really thought about him too much when it came to the brand switch or the superstar shakeup, but I'm happy to see that he'll get some fresh matches. He's been on Raw way too long. My only concern there is, similar to the first guy, I don't want him and Jinder Mahal to be near each other for a little while. I know they may not be on the same level, but I feel like they should be. I think they both should be dominant. I think Rusev, he was booked that first year, he was almost like the Goldberg character, he never loses, and now it's like he loses all the time. So I wish him a speedy recovery from his injury, and when he gets back, I hope they make him a prominent figure on SmackDown rather than a mid-carder, because I think he's got enough talent to hold an upper echelon position. I would actually think he deserves a shot and a run with the World Championship at some point after the career he's already had. They also announced that Lana is coming to SmackDown, and they made this tease as though she's coming in as a wrestler, not just his valet, which, you know, if she's been through the training, I know she's been down to NXT to the Performance Center several times. I know she's been working on her in-ring skill. If that works for her, great. I'm happy for her. But I wonder how you establish her as a female star when you've got to concern yourself with Rusev and his storylines. Like, you know, are there going to be days where she comes out and she wrestles a match and now she's exhausted and can't go to the ring with him? Or is she going to come out, have these throwdown with somebody, come out of the ring victorious, go to the back, and then all of a sudden she shows up in like an evening gown walking him to the ring, and it's like she has no ill effects of her match previously in the night. Like, I don't like either one of those. So I don't know how they're going to book this with Lana and Rusev being on the same brand if they're both going to be in-ring performers, but you know, I'm always a fan of expanding a brand, and the women's division needed some expansion. Now, with this 32-woman tournament coming up shortly, maybe Lana will be one of the 32, but it'll be curious to see how WWE books the women going forward. The big one that we all suspected, the New Day, is moving to SmackDown. I think that's great for them. It'll freshen up their characters, give them an opportunity to pursue a tag team championship they haven't held yet. Whereas on Raw, if they would have gone after the Raw tag team championship, it's kind of like recycling the same old stuff. Here, it'll have a nice, fresh feel. And I'm hoping... my concern here is that with Kofi Kingston's injury that was reported on WWE.com, that I'm concerned that they'll pull some angle where Big E and Xavier Woods are on SmackDown, and somehow Kofi wasn't included in that, and he'll stay on Raw, and it'll effectively end the three-way tag team. I don't want to see that. I actually like the way they pull off the Freebird rule when it comes to wrestling. I think they do it even better than the Freebirds did, to be perfectly honest with you. So hopefully all three of them stay together, they stay on SmackDown, and they tear it up there. I'd like to see them get a 400 and some day run with the SmackDown Tag Team Championships. Make those titles actually mean something, because Lord knows they haven't since December. And then, you know, the one we covered the other day, Byron Saxton moving over on commentary. Some people think that there's no chance JBL leaves the company based on his bullying claims lately, but I think this here gives them a backup plan. If for some reason they do need to make a move from JBL and move on from him, Byron Saxton can handle the broadcast. He's a solid announcer. He's really established himself over the last year or so, and I appreciate his work. Very solid on the mic. So I think for SmackDown, in a lot of ways, these shakeups, I don't feel like they lost very much. I think the biggest loss they had was The Miz and Maurice, but if that's what you have to lose to gain Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, The New Day, Rusev, Charlotte, you know, that's a lot to bring in. And if you're able to cultivate Jinder Mahal into something, which if you can't tell, obviously I'm a raving fan of Jinder Mahal. If you could cultivate all that, you've really done a good job. And I think there's rumor now that they want to do another superstar shakeup after SummerSlam. I'm hoping that's not the case, because I don't think you have enough time between now and SummerSlam to put AJ Styles into a program with whoever comes, you know, obviously probably Randy Orton. And I also, plus his feud, it's going to happen now with Kevin Owens for the U.S. title, and then get him into a feud with Shinsuke Nakamura somewhere down the line. I don't think there's enough time for all that, and that's the match we want to see, is Shinsuke Nakamura. And I fear that the reason that neither Roman Reigns nor AJ Styles changed brands during this split was because they thought, oh, well, we could just do that again after SummerSlam, and I really don't want to see that. I really want to see AJ Styles and Nakamura in the ring, preferably at WrestleMania next year. I think that would be an amazing draw. That's all the time we have for this episode. Check back with us next episode. We'll cover everything going on in the world of wrestling, and we will try to keep you guys posted on any other tidbits and news that come up in the media out there. There's stuff every day, and if we tried to put them all out there every day, I don't think I would sleep at night. But I'm going to try to get you guys as much as I can going forward. Thank you as always for tuning in. Thanks to bensound.com and purpleplanet.com as always for providing all of our music and sound effects. Thank you as always to Beazle Games, who gives us Sketchy People, which if you have never seen this game, killer game. It's kind of like a combination of Pictionary and like Chutes and Ladders kind of stuff. But check that out at www.thegamecrafter.com/sketchypeople. Pick up your copy today. And to alleyrepair.com. This guy services skee-ball machines, pinball, arcade games like none other. So if you have a need for that, feel free, contact alleyrepair.com. And as always, go to our website at www.frolifeplanning.com to see what we can do for you on your path to higher education. Remember, Fro Life educational planning is for today, for tomorrow, and for life with Fro Life. I'm Fred Froelich, better known as Mr. Fro. I want to thank you as always for taking the time to sit with us today and take in our podcast. If you know anybody who would be interested in hearing what we have to say, by all means, first off, click subscribe, give us a like, give us some comments, and spread the word, because you guys are the force that's making the Fro Life podcast a success, and that means the world to me. Thank you so much for all your continued support. Until next episode, take care, everybody. Have a great night.